This is 20 Minutes Live. Welcome to all of you from India and around the world. I'm Ninad Karpe, partner at 100x.vc. Today I'm truly delighted we have Sonal Holland. Sonal is a celebrated wine personality and India's first and only master of wine. That's amazing. For those in the know, the Master of Wine is the most respected title with a present count of only 389 Masters of Wine across 30 countries. She is the founder of Sonal Holland Wine Academy, which offers wine education and consultancy to leading luxury hotels and brands. She's also the founder of Soho Wine Club that curates exclusive events and tastings for the discerning. And of course, India Wine Awards that ranks the best wines and restaurant wine programs in the country. Sonal has been listed among the top 50 most powerful women in Indian luxury and has won several awards for her incredible journey to becoming one in a billion. We are so proud of you, Sonal. And thank you for joining us today. Our format is simple, unique, and crisp. Sonal will speak for 10 minutes, and after that, we'll have a round of Q&A for 10 minutes. So it's a 20-minute live program. If you have any questions, don't wait. There's a comments column on your screen. Please shoot a question to Sonal. And now over to Sonal for her 10 minutes.
Nina, thank you so very much. Firstly, for that very flattering introduction and for this incredible opportunity to be on this very unique platform, which is 100x.vc. It's really amazing that you're trying to cover such genuine, authentic, and diverse amount of content in a very short span of time. I understand fully that I'm on this 10-minute time bomb. So I'm really not going to waffle around. I'm going to try and keep it concise. So I was thinking, what about wine could I speak in a way that would be meaningful within 10-minute time frame? And I thought the best way to tackle, because the world of wine is so diverse, I can spend a whole lifetime learning about wines and still never know enough. So I thought, what could we do in 10 minutes? And I thought the best way to tackle and make the most effective use of our time would be to talk about what are the popular wine myths surrounding wine. Because wine is so popular today, it is the new media symbol of success, sophistication, romance, celebration. It's the fastest growing beverage in India today, and all demographics, including young millennial, women, senior corporate, anybody who's anybody who is taking to wine in a very big way. So, it's very important that we also somehow unravel through the mysterious and the complex world of wines and deal with certain snobby facts or certain misnomers or myths that we feel cloud our decision making when it comes to choosing the right bottle of wine. So what I've done is there are endless myths, of course, but I have come up with 5 key top popular wine myths that I feel surround wine lovers in India, and I'm going to quickly run through them now. So the first myth about wine is expensive wine is always the higher quality wine. Now, unlike any other beverage or unlike any other industry, the world of wine is extremely fragmented and is disorganized. What I mean by disorganized is there are many companies owning fewer brands or just 1 or 2 brands. So because of this level of fragmentation, we have millions and millions of labels all around the world. There are so many different regions that produce wines from all around the world. And so the world of wine is really a bewildering place, and there are many levels of quality. So when you talk about the price of a wine, it is determined by many factors outside of just quality. It's not such a linear relationship when it comes to pricing and quality, especially in the world of wines. The price of a wine is also determined by things like where it's located, the image, the brand image that the wine label enjoys, the scores that it has enjoyed from wine critics. So as a result, sometimes certain wines can have a slightly inflated price, not to mention the various regulations that exist across the world in different markets, how wine travels, the distance between the place where it's made to the port of consumption. All of these finally impact the price of a wine. So I think the best way to evaluate the quality of the wine is actually to be able to taste it like a professional and be able to judge it purely based on what you taste on your palate and not on the basis of its price. My other pro tip would be to choose wines based on, so I'm a big proponent of trying wines from places that are fairly unfamiliar, less familiar grape varieties, because there are so many winemakers with a high level of passion, high level of knowledge, who are producing incredible quality wines in these regions, but are still relatively unknown. So when you go for wines that come from such regions or made with such varieties or from such producers, you tend to get some exceptional value for wine. So the best way to unravel the world of wines, I would say, would be to keep trying the less discovered, and keep being on a journey of discovery. And that's how you will unearth and discover some fabulous quality wines. The second myth is old wine is good wine. Now, this, according to me, is the most popular wine myth. A vast majority of us tend to believe that the older the wine, the better it is. But did you all know that 95% of the wines made around the world are meant to be drunk young and fresh? They're meant to be drunk within the first 2 or 3 years of the vintage on the bottle. And so if you endlessly sort of age them, they're going to lose their freshness, they're going to taste dull and flabby. So my pro tip for the day for you would be that if you're looking to consume some of your everyday drinking, inexpensive, simple, youthful wines, then you're better off drinking them early rather than later. If you're in doubt about when to drink a particular wine, you're better off drinking it early than later, because later means you don't know how it's been stored, where it comes from, how long it's been sitting, and in what conditions. So more and more wines today are being made around the world by producers to be made enjoyable at the time of uncorking. So your best bet is actually drinking them early than later. And what I mean by early is, if you're in 2020 today, you should be looking at consuming wines of vintages which are 2018 or 2017 at the very latest, especially for your inexpensive everyday drinking wines. The third popular myth about wine is wines that are under screw cap are inferior in quality to wines that are under corks. So here I have a bottle of wine which is covered under screw cap. This is what I mean. Firstly, I find screw cap wines hugely convenient because you don't need any special equipment. You just sort of unscrew them, you pour yourself a glass, and you can always put the screw top back on and put it in the refrigerator if you just wish to keep it for an extra night of storage before you consume the entire bottle. So firstly, they're massively convenient. But also from a quality point of view, understand that screw caps came into existence because there was a problem with corks. Cork had developed this problem with cork taint, or what we commonly refer to as corked wines, which is a kind of a fungal infection. I won't go too much into that because we don't have enough time for that explanation. But the fact is that screw caps came into existence as a solution, as an effective solution to wines under corks. And screw cap technology has made huge amount of progress over the past few years. So today it has been proven scientifically that wines under screw cap can remain fresh, not just for early drinking or within the first few years, but actually can age also beautifully. I have tasted some aged Rieslings in Germany or in Australia, which have been aged for 10, 15, 20 years under screw cap. And trust me, they are amazing. So don't ever be in doubt, because the fact is that 90% of Australia and New Zealand, a large amount of wines from the New World, and what I mean by New World is wines that are outside of Europe, and also a lot of producers in Europe today are unhesitatingly adopting the screw cap technology. And so do not look down upon wines that are under screw cap. The fourth myth that I want to talk about is people who read the word reserve on a label tend to automatically think that this is a better wine, this is a superior quality wine. Now, in certain countries like Italy or in Spain, the word reserve or reserva is a regulated term. What I mean by that is, by legal terms, if you have to use that term on a label, it means and it indicates that the wine has been through some special amount of aging, an extra number of years in the bottle, or extra number of years under oak, which automatically would translate into higher quality, more expensive, and so on and so forth. But outside of Italy and Spain, I don't know of any other country around the world where the term reserva or reserve is regulated. And when I say that, it could mean two things. What I mean is, if there's reserva featuring on a label, it could mean two things. One is that maybe the producer genuinely is putting reserva because he's trying to show that this is a wine made with grapes that come from the most superior parcels of land in what he owns, or that he's done something special with it, he's taken some extra care, and so he's proud of this wine, and therefore he wished to put reserva because these are his premium wines from his table. But that's a very relative thing, because his best doesn't necessarily mean the best or high quality on a global stage. So again, you have to rely on your own judgment of palate and how you taste, and whether this is a wine that is truly deserving of the premium price or premium designation or premium image. But on the worst case scenario, the word could mean absolutely nothing at all. I know of some producers, without naming them, who simply use the word reserva because it's just a marketing gimmick. They know that most consumers would fall for that and think of that wine as a superior quality, and therefore tend to put reserve on a label. So don't think anything of it. The last myth about wine that I want to cover is heavy bottles are higher quality wines. Now, again, this is a bit of a marketing gimmick, because when you make a very heavy bottle and you hold the heavy bottle, consumers tend to think, oh, it's heavy, so it must mean something solid inside the bottle. But remember one thing, guys, it's not inside the bottle that's important. It's not outside the bottle that's important. It is what is inside. Heavier bottles mean more money spent on packaging, higher carbon footprint to ensure that that bottle gets from where it's been made to come into your homes. And I think today, as we are moving towards more environmentally sustainable ways of consuming everything around us, I think lean and light is the way to go. So I would encourage you as wine lovers to encourage lighter bottles of wine. Of course, not necessarily at the cost of drinking inferior wine, but the point is, don't go by the weight of the bottle. Go by what's inside the bottle and how that wine tastes, and whether you believe it is of a high quality. Of course, assessing quality in a wine is a whole objective phenomena, a whole objective process. And if I had more time, I would have talked more about how to taste wine like a pro. But I think for now, hopefully these top 5 wine myths have been something that will help you make some good, steady inroads into the world of wines. Cheers.
Thank you. That was amazing. We will certainly get you back, if you agree, for some more time later. But there are tons of questions.
Rapid fire for me, Ninad.
Well, that's the magic of 20 minutes live. I should have had my glass of wine, but there are a lot of questions. I'll pick some, and maybe you'll have to again be a little bit crisp. Anuj is asking the standard question, which I'm sure people ask you: temperature at which you have to serve wine, basically in India. White wine, red wine, what is the temperature?
I'm going to treat this like a rapid fire. So you got to chill your whites and cool your reds. And don't be, pedantic about it. When I say cool your reds, they really can't be at Indian room temperature, because Indian room temperature is way too hot. So don't go by this room temperature phenomena that was coined by the Europeans for the European room temperature. When you talk about the right service temperature for reds, you're looking at between 15 to 18 degrees roughly. And for your whites, you're looking at anywhere between 8 to 12 degrees, and your sparkling much more chilled. So consume your chilled or your sweet wines and your sparklings at about 6 degrees Celsius. But don't be so pedantic, because if your 6 is 8, doesn't matter. Go instinctively, because the minute you taste the wine, you will know instinctively that it's drinking at the right temperature. Just as you know the right temperature to consume beer and the right temperature to consume your tea, whether it's cold enough and it's hot enough, instinctively over time you will know whether your wine is drinking at the right service temperature.
And how important is the glass? You have an amazing glass over there for consumption of wine.
So glass is very important. I like to go with the saying that clothes maketh a man. You've heard of that, like clothes make a man. And so if clothes make a man, the right glassware maketh a wine. I say this because the glass shape automatically transforms the way that the wine lands on your palate. Depending on whether the mouth of the glass is wider or narrower, it immediately impacts where the wine lands on your palate and alters the sensation of the wine. So for example, if you have a very wide-mouthed bowl, the wine will land more towards the back of your throat or your palate, where you get more bitter sensation. So whereas if I have a much narrower opening, it will land more towards the tip, where I can taste acidity better, or I can taste fruit better, or sweetness better. So all of these things impact. But ultimately, I will say, without trying to overcomplicate, if you're looking for an ideal glass of wine to start your journey with wines, then look for something with a steady base, a nice stem. Doesn't matter if it's long or short, just something functional to hold it with, a wider bowl, and a inward sloping wall. That's the functional shape of a good wine glass.
And you spoke about palate. So there are a couple of questions. I'm trying to paraphrase them in the interest of time. Yeah. Indian food and wine. There's always a myth surrounding that.
Yeah. There's always a wine to go with Indian foods. I think the best bet, I mean, I could go on talking about it, but the simple answer to that is try to go with wines that are fruity, because they really help offset the heavy level of spice. And I don't mean spicy, but spice also. So you need fruity wines. A little bit of sweetness in the wines is actually not a bad thing. So don't look down upon them. I have a problem with people who continuously degrade slightly sweeter wines. Remember, at one point in time, some of the sweetest wines were the most expensive wines in the world. So sweet wines are not to be looked down upon. A little bit of off-dry wines is a good thing for spicy wines, for spicy foods, I beg your pardon. And try to match intensity. So, very intense flavors in food require slightly more intense flavors in wine. So try and match, go with more robust kind of expressive wines like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Riesling or a Gruner Veltliner, or a number of them in whites. And in reds, I would go with low tannin wines like Pinot Noir, a Côte de Rhône, a Grenache, a Beaujolais, even a young Rioja, a nice Tempranillo, a young Malbec, a number of them.
So this is a question for you to now respond from a industry perspective. Subha Bangera is asked, why is wine categorized as alcohol? Isn't it stifling the industry?
Me, it's the bee in my bonnet too. I mean, honestly, I wish it wasn't. I think the government really needs to start looking at wine as an agricultural product, because it creates tremendous amount of employment opportunities within the rural sector. The tourism is such a big industry in itself, and wine tourism is raking in billions and billions for California and so many other, countries around the world. So I feel there's so much opportunity to create that wine could really solve a lot of problems at the industrial level for the government and for the economy as a whole. But at a consumer level too, wine is lower in alcohol as compared to other spirits. But I must also emphasize here, guys, that for a lot of you who believe that, wine is healthy, which means that I can drink it in any proportion. No, at the end of the day, yes, there is an alcohol content, and it's very easy to lose track about how much alcohol you end up consuming. It's not about how much wine. You have to calculate the amount of alcohol you're consuming. Again, for another session, but always moderation and balance is the key.
Moderation and balance is the key. Great. So talking about tourism, in fact, there are one or two questions on wine tourism. And they're asking you, Sonal, what are your recommendations? Which are good places to start? Tourism is now not there, but when it starts again in India and outside India.
So domestically, guys, we only have one choice. You really need to just drive over to Nasik, and there are a few facilities now to stay. I really love what Sula has done with their tourism. They have nearly close to 100 rooms where you can stay, and they're all very charming. So they've really built a beautiful experience for wine consumers, especially for those who are new to the world of wines. I think that's a good starting point. Once you've kind of been there, done that, then I think if you look internationally, you could go any place, but I would say the most accessible and easiest to reach out to would be when you go to Italy and you go to Florence, going to Tuscany is just an hour's drive. So that's very, very accessible, so you can just, go to Florence, enjoy the rest of Italy, enjoy the food, the culture, and then just sort of book a tour for 1 or 2 days, take a car, it takes an hour, and within an hour, you're into these beautiful vineyards of Tuscany. And Tuscany is a fabulous region to explore. I mean, it's an important wine region. So it's not like you're on the outskirts. The other place I will also recommend is Napa Valley. A lot of us Indians enjoy going to USA, and we end up in San Francisco very often. So 1 hour's drive again from San Fran, you're into Napa Valley, which is one of the most prestigious wine regions, especially for exploring wine tourism. So I would say that's a good starting point. फिर यूरोप भी कर सकते हैं, but यूरोप में थोड़ा काम करना पड़ेगा because it's like a little interior. It means a little more traveling. You have to change flights, and it's a lot of taam-jam.
So Priyam Singh is, very persistent in asking about what is your view on wine in a can?
I've only consumed wine one time.
Okay.
And, only one time. I have not prejudiced against it. I mean, I think it helps bring new consumers to wine, because a lot of people find bottle, corkscrew, having to open, having to invest in wine glasses, proper storage. They find it very, very intimidating and taxing. And, if we want to make wine mainstream around the world, and we are such a nascent country, it's going to take us a while before we are like there and we have all this full-on infrastructure to enjoy wine properly. So I think if it helps introduce new consumers to wine, I'm all for it. And there's a wine for everybody. There's a way. There are wines in Tetra Paks. There are wines in taps, on taps. And there are now producers who are making wines to bring in the cocktail crowd. So they're literally like cocktail in a bottle, virtually. Personally, I wouldn't enjoy drinking them because I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm not trying to be snobby, but like I'm somewhere up, not up, but sort of further on my journey of enjoyment of wines. But I think if it helps bring new consumers to wine, absolutely go for it. Why not? The more the merrier.
Right. So I'll take the last two questions from viewers, and then I would like to ask you one or two. So Rajiv, who's from Singapore, is asking, why are most French wines made from blends and not a single grape?
Yeah, that's a damn good question, Rajiv. So Europe and France in general enjoy marginal climate. What I mean by marginal climate is that the grapes that grow in France for winemaking up to now grow in terms of the ripening potential, they are on the outermost border of the climatic ability to ripen. Yeah, I mean, grapes need to ripen to be able to produce sugar, and then from sugar you get alcohol. So if you're in a very cool country or cool climate, or if you're in a place that has problems with hail, frost, storms, undue rainfall, which could probably risk spoiling the vintage, then every wine producing country then needs to hedge its bets. So the purpose of planting many grapes was to hedge bets, because they always had some grapes that ripened a bit early, some that ripened a bit late. So depending on how there was a vintage variation, it allowed you to sort of hedge your bets and be able to still consistently produce a blend and come up with a crop and release a wine, to remain commercially viable. So a lot of those. But I think today, with more global warming and more certainty in terms of being able to ripen grapes, if you've been to Bordeaux recently or France recently, you will see that a lot of the producers are now reducing the percentage of those grapes that they do not want. Like if you go to Bordeaux, for example, they're reducing the plantings of Merlot. They're going more for Cabernet Sauvignon, which is able to ripen now, which needs a lot of heat. But today, because of thanks to global warming, they are enjoying good sunshine year after year consistently. So blend starts to phase out once you know the surety of sunshine and ripening potential.
I'm going to ask the last question from viewers on your views on Indian wines.
Indian wines, in a nutshell, are getting better. I've been tasting wines for 12 years consistently as a wine professional, and I can say with certainty that the quality has improved. There's been a lot of earnest effort made by certain sincere, good producers of wine here, and a lot of our Indian wines are starting to win at competitions in blind tastings in India at India Wine Awards, as well as overseas. So that's all very heartening. It's all moving in the right direction. I have written recently an article in Condé Nast Traveler, literally like last month. So if you Google Condé Nast Traveler, Sonal Holland, top Indian wines, I have given a list of 15 top Indian wines that you should be drinking in 2020. So this is my curated selection. And the fact that I was able to pick 15 wines to recommend to drink in 2020, I think is a good step in the positive direction, because 5 years ago, I couldn't pick 15 wines, Nina. I was struggling.
So great. I think I'm going to ask last one or two questions. So suppose I am interested, but I've done WSET level 1. But let's say a lay viewer is interested and wants to know more about wine education. Is there anything you offer? Is there something which he can come to you? What is it? Is there a platform you can approach?
Thank you enough for this question, Nina. The truth is that, it's great you've done WSET, but WSET does tend to be overly academic, and it's for people who really want to be professionals in the wine world. There's a whole lot of you out there who don't really want to be a bartender or a sommelier or something like that, right? You just want to learn about wine for the love of wine. You're all consumers. You're more wine lovers. So as you know, we've been running Sonal Holland Wine Academy now since 2009. So we've been in this business of education, and up to now, it's been classroom trainings. But we've now forayed into online education. And just literally last month, we launched our first online wine course called 60-Minute Wine Pro. I like to refer to it as the jumbo shrimp course in wine. Jumbo shrimp because it's shrimp wise, it's small, it's compact, it's to the point, but it's jumbo, which means that it's intense and it's a lot of information packed within an hour. So all you need to do is give me 60 minutes of your time, go online, take this course. There are 10 modules, which will make you a bona fide wine pro and will give you all the knowledge you need in terms of how to taste wine, how to read a wine label confidently, how to serve wines with panache, what are the must-know wines to impress your guests, how to go about choosing your wines, so on and so forth. A little chapter on Indian wines too, popular wine myths, all of that. And and then you get a certificate. You get a certificate
Okay.
from Sonal Holland Wine Academy, which is very pretty looking. So, and it's priced extremely well, Ninad. It's for 2,200 all in, like inclusive of taxes, certification, everything. So we've tried to make it affordable because we really want more and more people to come and take this course. The best way to visit it is www.sonalholland.com. That's my website,
Okay,
and there's a
great.
education section, and they can access it from there.
Well, as soon as the show is done, you know what I'm going to do? Go to the
Thank,
website and enroll. I'm
thank
not
you.
going to leave you without asking you a personal question, if I may. It's
Yeah.
been 3 months of lockdown, and you know you're in a very interesting profession which you love, you're passionate, and you enjoy the wine as well. But other than drinking good wines, is there anything, any new hobby, new skill which you have picked up in the last 3 months?
So, firstly, I know I shouldn't sound ungrateful, but this lockdown has been a boon in disguise personally for me, and I'm so grateful for that because it's been terrific time with the family, my daughter, because I lead such an intense traveling life and all that. So it's hard to find good quality time within the family. So it's been great. But in terms of a skill, two things. One, a little bit about wine, but I've been learning to cook with wine. I've been a hopeless cook up
Okay.
to now. But this lockdown time has a little bit pushed me to explore my cooking skills, but I've been trying that with wine, and I've made quite a few nice videos about it as well. So that's been a new sort of an area that I've been exploring. And more than anything, Ninad, I think I've become a technological wizard. I knew nothing about
Wow.
technology. And you told me 3 months ago, you need to get on this platform and click this and click that. I was somebody assisting me. But because we've had no one around us, none of our people to assist us, I have learned everything I need to know about social media, digital marketing, emailers, Zoom, webinars, name it. And it's been like
Wow.
technology has been the big savior, right? Like I think I've learned a lot about technology and digital marketing. Like even launching this online course, it's been
Great.
like once it's out, it sounds easy. But literally, when you're doing it, it's like moving a mountain. Like planning the whole thing and getting it and going live is another ball game. So it's been quite a learning technologically for me.
Great intersection of technology and wine. It can't get better. We're so delighted, Sonal, you could come this afternoon and join us on 20 Minutes Live. You know, I could have gone on, but I hope to get you again sometime later in the year, and I hope you'll agree to come on this show. Thank you again, Sonal. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today on 20 Minutes Live. And I'll hope to see you next Thursday as well. Thank you, Sonal.
It's been great pleasure. Thank you for having me again. Thank you. And thank you all for your terrific questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.